Hello, my name is Paul Daniele. I am the Executive Director of the Rural Growth Initiative, a nonprofit based out of Columbia, South Carolina. Our mission is to put rural communities on a path to sustainable growth while preserving character and culture.
One of the biggest challenges facing rural America is population loss. Towns like Cheraw, South Carolina have seen a steady decline from 6,000 residents in 2010 to just 5,000 in 2020. What if we could change that? In this session, we take you behind the scenes of a blueprint for rural revitalization, a strategic marketing campaign designed to attract new residents. William Mitchell of Timothy Sinclair shares how the campaign was built, launched, and the results it delivered. And Rob Wolf, the town manager of Cheraw, gives us a first-hand look at what it's like to engage directly with potential residents and welcome them into the community. Let's dive in.
Well, I'm William Mitchell. Great to be here with you all.
I'm Rob. Nice to be here. Thank you all for joining.
So we're very excited. Paul wanted us to share a little bit. We were the marketing partner who ran the Cheraw Remote campaign. Paul thought it would be good just to give you a little bit of color on kind of the thought that went into the campaign, some of the results, and how it might serve as a blueprint for other communities. Just quick and dirty about us. So we're a small boutique marketing firm based out of South Carolina. We've done it all from B2B software sales to D2C. We've had the chance to work with the Coca-Cola brand, but really our biggest strength is in rural communities like Orangeburg, Camden, Cheraw, where we've been able to have the biggest impact. A small team of 5. We're really focused on a deeper relationship with a fewer number of clients, and so really had a great time building a relationship both with Rob and Paul and getting the chance to dig in a little bit to the Cheraw community. So our goal, of course, overarching goal, reverse population decline in Cheraw, right, and establish the cost of the program. We want to grow Cheraw's population, but we also want to look forward towards a sustainable model that could be put into use somewhere else or be doubled down on Cheraw moving forward. And there are existing programs, as Paul talked about. They leverage remote workers to reverse the decline, but they're heavily dependent on financial incentives, right? That is something that is not going to be viable for a smaller community. Those programs have done stellar work. They've really transformed communities, whether it's Tulsa Remote, which really led the way, Shoals Remote, another stellar program. But for a smaller community, again, offering $10,000 for someone to move just may not be possible, right? Especially on top of the costs of running the campaign itself. So one of the things we really wanted to test out was looking at, rather than selling a financial incentive, can you just sell a vision of what your life can be, what a community can be with you in it, and what it can mean to you to help transform that community into a new vision. A lot of these financial programs, they do great work. They also kind of have this idea in their marketing, don't worry, you're going to be able to maintain your creature comforts, right? The important things of your upper middle class lifestyle, you'll be able to maintain in this rural community. You'll still be able to eat pizza. You'll still be able to eat sushi. Like, this place will be a lot like where you came from. We wanted to really double down and say, don't worry, this place is much better than where you came from. You feel alienated in an urban environment, we will connect you in our rural community. You feel disconnected from the natural world, we will reconnect you with opportunity. You feel stuck, and whether it's in your personal or your professional life, we will unstick you as we welcome you into our homes and offices, right? So again, rather than this financial incentive, rather than the promise of maintaining a lot of your lifestyle, we're offering you this vision of a new lifestyle and an opportunity to have an impact, right? So, our messaging, and this is, I won't read this word for word, but our core messaging that we developed was that Cheraw is a place to rediscover the outdoors, right? Close to the PD River, right near lots of public access points, a place to engage where you can get involved in public life, right? It's a smaller pond, and for someone who's active and wants to really see themselves in their community, it's a place to do that. A place to connect, get to know your neighbors, things like that. Classic you'll find across any of these campaigns. But again, a place to grow. One of our founding assumptions is that there's a population of alienated individuals living in these more urban areas. Again, that idea of being unstuck, and we want them to see Cheraw as a place to get unstuck and to grow in your personal and professional life. In Cheraw, we're building an active, engaged, connected community. We're inviting remote workers who share that vision to join us. That's the core of it, right? We're not apologizing for Cheraw. We're not saying they're these, skeletons under our closet. We're saying this is an amazing place. We're building it even to a better place, and we would love you to have a tangible, substantial role in joining that journey with us. And that was our underlying ethos for what would drive the visit, what would drive leads, and what would drive people to make the move to Cheraw. So we started out with just a real flexible, simple brand. Cheraw has a vision for a brand refresh for their community. We didn't want to bump into that, right? So we wanted something that was sort of corporate, toned down, but mild enough that it wouldn't, it could be future-proof, right? We built it into a simple word mark, and we did some little value props for Cheraw. So golf, the Sandblast Rally, Dizzy Gillespie famously grew up there. So if they ever wanted to cross-market this one with an event, we wanted to give them the flexibility. Again, just all the basic nuts and bolts, and turn that into a website that could really tell our story. Of course, on the tail end of this, we sell them with the vision, right? But we still want to sand those edges on making that transition. So of course, we're still going to let them know that housing is attainable and low cost, that you'll find reliable broadband to be able to have a meeting and stream Netflix, and that you'll find that supportive community. So it's not that we aren't messaging on these, classic remote work, rural community value props, but we want to lead with the vision, which also helps select for the type of person we want to come to our community, right? You don't want someone to blow in and blow out. It helps us self-select for the type of person who wants to get engaged, and then sand the edges to make that move a little bit easier. And of course, we needed a star for our campaign, and that's where Rob came in. So another idea of this is if you have a large budget and you have financial incentives, you can do a lot of interesting things. You can test marketing across channels. You can do lots of great A/B testing. We kind of knew that because we were dealing with a smaller budget, the cost per lead, the cost per conversion, the amount of money we were going to spend to get to that first conversation was probably going to be a little higher, right? So the leads that did come in, we needed to really have a strategy for how we were going to convert them at a higher rate than a traditional campaign. And so that was one of our big experiments, was creating a local voice who could say, if you sign up, if you do this lead, the actual town manager will call you on the phone and invite you to dinner, a real human being, right? Not this faceless campaign, and have a personal experience with you about his community. So we built the whole campaign around Rob, who turned out to be the perfect person for it. I don't want to make his head too big, but he was quite charming, if you've seen the ad. Our target market, Charlotte Metro, it's close. Very developed economy, lots of remote workers, close to Cheraw, so if somebody's got family there, they can kind of make the jump. We knew that would be a good place to test the pilot. Remote worker demographics, this is well-tread ground. You're looking at 25 to 55. People probably have families, so a lot there to target with. And then we made our ads. We put Rob at the center of it, kind of, again, that personal invitation, right? People get a lot of ads. They're all faceless. They're all corporate. They're all bland. This explicitly said, hey, my name's Rob. Give me your phone number. I want to get dinner, which is something people aren't just used to seeing. So we thought it was a little more disruptive. And I'll give you a summary. And again, this is kind of we twisted what a marketing funnel will be a little bit, just to give you an idea.
Just real quick. So for those of us in the room, we'll watch the ad after because I don't want to screw up the AV stuff. For those of you online, you can watch the ad later. We'll give you the URL, but don't watch it now because William's still talking.
This isn't quite how you're supposed to use a marketing funnel, but I thought we could bend it a little bit just for our purposes. So we communicated with about 20,000 people in the Charlotte Metro to get about 90 people to apply, to get about 10 people to visit the town. So that's kind of what the funnel looks like on a short budget like this, real shotgun campaign. It ran for 4 weeks. We kind of thought without the incentive, we would have a hard time getting meaningful conversations in. So about halfway through, we were a little inundated. We had to start screening. We had to start throwing up those barriers.
Can I add some color on that?
Sure.
It was more like this. Shut it off! Shut it off! We were headed towards, I want to say we were probably headed towards 1,000 leads. So what we did then, you're going to talk about this. Are you? All right, I just want to throw this in there. What we did then is we need to stop. So we stopped it, regrouped, and we're like, okay, we got to do something different because there's way too many people trying to get dinner with Rob. We're gonna bankrupt the town and forget the $10,000 incentive. So we put a firewall basically between it and forced them to fill out a long kind of not problematic, but asking them how would you be socially interacting with us if you were to live in our community? Are you really a remote worker? What type of company do you work with? We added a whole bunch, and that helped slow it down a little bit. So back to you.
Yeah. So front-loading with a series of qualifying questions, right? And we were adding qualifying questions on. We were making it harder to apply until we got to a point where the lead quality was getting a little higher. Again, with 4 weeks and a smaller budget, there's only so much you can do, but we were nimble on kind of getting that done. So key insights, interest exceeded expectation. Overall, across all kind of forms of the campaign, we pulled in about 200 leads. Around 98 of them turned out to be people that were actually interested in potentially making a move. The cost per lead was strong. Again, we knew we were going to pay a little bit more in this format. It ended up being about $16 to pull in a lead, $27 to pull in someone who is actually interested in engaged in having a conversation, learning more about the town, potentially moving there. And really that authenticity drives impact. I know Rob actually had the conversations. He'll be able to provide a little more color. But even if they weren't interested in the dinner itself, just the fact that this is the kind of place that cares enough to put a leader forward and to put their time into it, drove a lot of the impact in those conversations. Because of course you're in a competitive market, right? And so that's a big differentiator. You know, if 10 rural towns are all have the same value props, they're all pitching you on reconnect with rural, you know, escape the city, whatever, like having Rob, a town leader who's engaged, helps you differentiate even against other people running remote work programs. So cost, Paul, I don't know if you actually want to run through this.
Okay, so we're going to let you look under the hood here. So our rough estimate is that, and these numbers are a little bit higher than what actually was charged because there was some kind of pro bono hours and work put in. But our rough estimate is that to do a very, very basic pilot campaign, that the cost should be around $12,000 or $13,000. That's if you have no ads already shot, you have no video or any narrative to use. But one key point here is you're going to need someone to run your ad management, and you also need someone to run your ad spend, which is actually cost per ad. So ad management is setting up and configuring it all to make sure you're targeting people properly. But then $5,000 for the ad shoot, and then about $5,000 for program management. Now, some of that program management could be just housed internally within your organization too. So, and then we wanted to kind of pie in the sky. Well, what does this mean? If you scaled it to what a typical like small town, small city program might cost for pretty much all sorts of things, strategic plans, architectural reviews, that type of thing, you'd be looking at about just probably around $50,000, but would get 1,200 qualified leads. And if you get about a 1% conversion into people actually moving there, you're looking at about 24 families relocating the community. Rob will talk about this, but they've already actually had people coming to visit as a result of our little campaign. So,
and I think you can kind of have this like imaginary third column that says if you were paying all these people $5,000 or $10,000, which for the record, again, if you have the budget to do is great. It's a proven model, right? But if you don't, you can kind of see the savings across from one program to the next in terms of the model. Potential economic impact. This feels like another Paul slide.
This is the same thing you saw in the earlier slides, but I just took the same numbers and roughed them out. So what, $46,000 in program costs, 24 remote workers. Actually, it's 50 new people moving into town, 14 homes purchased, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing surprisingly, nothing odd there. I do want to point out that, and this goes, sorry, I want to say one of the things our nonprofit's looking at is thought leadership, and Aaron Bozel, if he's still on the line, I just want to say the guy who created Tulsa Remote, he's the one, because I went to ask him, I was like, hey, we want to do a program in Hartsville. How much should we give people? How many dollars? He's like, none of the people in that Tulsa Remote program that went for $10,000 went for $10,000. That's what he told us. That's the inside secret. I wouldn't relocate my family for $10,000. I mean, that's a lot of work for $10,000. But the point I'm trying to make is this. That was a misnomer that you have to pay someone to move to your community. Botetourt County reinforced that, and that's why we're here to share this with you guys in the first place. So shout out to Aaron. He's an incredible thought leader in this whole space.
Yeah, and can be grateful enough to Aaron for his feedback on the front end and talking about all the amazing work they did at Tulsa. Great. Some of the challenges and opportunities, obviously, when you put one person with a full-time job as the person who's going to respond to all the leads, there's quite a bottleneck on what you can get done. We had way more interest than we thought. No, but in all frankness, we had way more interest than we thought. Like Rob is very busy running a town, so it's very clear that if to replicate the model, you would need some support, right? Whether it's like a group of community leaders, like you could still give it that local feel, but it wouldn't have to all be saddled on one person who's balancing this with other responsibilities. We had started a Cheraw Connected kind of scope program. This idea that you would build like an ambassador committee for these folks as they come in. But the idea, essentially building a small group, right? Essentially, I mean, it's essentially rebranding of a separate club, right? Find 10 to 15 people that are fairly well connected, that share your vision for the community, that can help these people kind of get more integrated into the community and can also help field these lead calls, right? So 100 calls, one person with a full-time job, pretty big burden, right? 5 calls spread out amongst 15 people a month, a lot more manageable. And I think a lot of our math would have looked even better if we had had that initial community intake. I think it was a struggle to get, the leads would come in, it was a struggle to get to them a little fast just due to capacity issues. And education limits family options. Again, Paul really touched on this, but some of the initial feedback we got was folks really concerned with education. And that was a big competitive differentiator. So to put a bow on it, I think like things we would look at moving forward again are really building out like that broader community support for the program. 1, to help intake leads. 2, to help integrate these people better, right? Tulsa Remote does this really, really well. I'm sure Shoals has like a similar thing where they help, community and bring people in, but just having it be a formal program, right? So you can set those expectations, 24 hours after a lead comes in, it's hot, they're interested, they're thinking about it. 72 hours later, like a week later, like nobody remembers what they did on Facebook a week ago, right? So again, just having that support. But Rob obviously had these conversations, so very interested in your feedback, Rob, if you just want to kind of chat through what your findings were.
Yeah, so I did have the opportunity to talk to quite a few people. And even though the target market was in primarily the Charlotte area, it being social media did spread. And I think I talked to people as far away as certainly in Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Virginia, North Carolina, and I think one from Tennessee as well. And it was kind of an interesting experience. One is, as we've touched on, had no idea what the scale of what we were getting into was going to be. And especially after I think it was my first or second call, it lasted 30 minutes. And I looked at the number of people I was expected to call and I said, this just isn't going to work. So that was an important part of getting it kind of narrowed down and making sure if we were going to spend that time to speak with these people, making sure that they were a qualified individual that would kind of meet what we were looking for. The second part of it is that personal touch of me calling them was a huge motivator in whether the conversation was productive or not. Paul kept mentioning, he said, look, if you can't make all the calls, we'll do it. And every time I got tempted to do that, I would call one more person and they would say, wow, I can't believe you actually bothered to call me. I thought for sure you would never call, or it would just be someone else who works for you. And so that personal touch really was a driver for having a connected conversation. It may not lead to a visit or something, but again, that personal touch did make it a more productive conversation overall. And you could kind of tell off the bat if someone was really interested or if they just kind of clicked on the link to see what would happen. I did have a few of those calls and they're like, I was just scrolling around and clicked on it. And then I had a few people who thought we were looking to hire remote workers. Those were still good calls, but not quite what we were looking for. But you could tell really quickly if they were serious because they had interesting questions about the community. They would ask about churches. They would ask about what festivals you have. I had questions fielded about the dating scene. People did ask about our fiber optic internet capability, and we are very fortunate that between AT&T and Sandhills Communication, we pretty much have fiber throughout the entire town at this point. We did have people ask what restaurants were like. They did want to know what our town was doing, and we are making investments in our downtown. We are making investments in our recreation facilities. We're doing neighborhood revitalization efforts. We're trying to, as my predecessor used to always say, we're not sitting around waiting for Santa Claus. We're out there trying to do stuff ourselves and hopefully demonstrate that we are a town trying to improve ourselves. Come be part of that journey with us. And that did resonate with people, especially when you pitch it as this idea that you can come to a small town and be an active member of a community, and not only be an active member, but you can actually make a difference within that community. We have I'm sure Daniel can relate, we have a dearth of people for commissions and you know, vacancies on commissions. We need volunteers. And not only are these great ways to meet people and get connected with people, but they feel a need for our community as well. And again, I just can't underemphasize how important that personal touch is, because the other thing I have personal experience in this that resonated with a lot of people, where I moved to Cheraw in 2019, 6 years ago next week, actually. And when I moved there, I was in a career transition. I had just been a park ranger and I had no intention of sticking around. I was like, yeah, this will hold me over until I figure out what I really want to do. And then 6 years later, I'm still there and I love it and I have no intention of leaving. And that really resonated with a lot of people too. So whatever you can do or whatever comes out of this, it's that personal connection. And I think anyone sitting in this room could sell your city or your town or your area to somebody if you can get connected with that person. And that's what this campaign achieved. It allowed me to talk about my experience, the experience of the town, and what their experience could be if they would give us a shot. And it did convert to visits. I had somebody call, or I called somebody on a Wednesday, and that Friday night they came to our downtown and saw Santa Claus in our downtown park and took a carriage ride through the town. And they brought their family of 4 just to check it out from Charlotte. You know, and I had other people come and visit, just want to check out the town, see what it was like on a Saturday night or a Friday afternoon. Now, William came up with the Dinner with Rob idea. And until last week, anyone want to guess how many people took me up on the dinner offer? 3? Anyone? None, nobody. Until last week, when I finally somebody did say, I'd like to come have dinner. I think they might be coming just because of the free dinner. I'm speculating. But the people who were really interested and wanted to know more about community, they didn't care about having dinner with me. But it was, again, that personal touch that brought them in. And so, William, you certainly deserve a lot of credit for coming up with that hook. And it did make for an interesting ad. Now,
So
of course,
we actually added some slides while you were gone.
oh,
So this is the map of all the different folks that responded. No, not at all. And then we also got one response from Zanzibar, Tanzania. That was kind of cool.
they did not answer.
They did not answer. Are you allowed to make international calls from the courthouse, or?
I did it on myself.
Okay, sorry. This is what their interests were, if I were to summarize them. Kind of cool. I mean, what we asked, and they delivered. This resonates. I know if Aaron was unmuted, Aaron Bozel from Tulsa said that this was huge for them, that the people that they recruited that came to their community, even though they had millions of dollars to spend, like unlike most of our communities, this was a big deal. And this, I can tell you firsthand, this is a big deal. It only takes 2 or 3 of these types of folks to move into a community to really push the needle. This is what their professions were. And nothing too much to say on this, but this is what you were just talking about.
Yeah, so again, being able to talk, again, if I get on the phone with somebody, I can at least paint a good picture for Cheraw, which of course it is a nice town. But again, this is kind of just sums up my brief notes with people. And I'm going to follow up with everybody, but again, it just kind of following up. That personal call was huge for those productive conversations. Being able to talk about us being a family-friendly environment, having the space, people that actually the first person who came to visit, the whole reason they came was because their townhome in, I think it was Matthews, North Carolina, was too small for their family of 4. he was a remote worker, she was a remote worker, but their kids needed more space. And so they came and checked it out and said, oh, you got kids, well, come see Santa Claus.
I just want to restate something. Like, we only stopped the campaign less than a month ago, or just about a month ago. So has anyone moved there yet? No, but we're on to something, and that's why we're sharing. We're not going to sit around and wait for another year and then come back to you with some results. So that's why we're coming out quick to share. See if I had any more slides. No, I don't. That's just a picture of me, which is always nice. And then, thank you. But with that, I want to open up for questions. But before we open up for questions, I just want to say, since you're going to have a lot of people coming and you don't want to blow the town budget, and given your national park experience, I bought you this wonderful National Parks cookbook, so you can cook for them at home rather than have to treat them out to dinner. Hopefully, save the town some money.
Absolutely. So I was afraid I was actually. It's worth noting that the food budget is going to come out of my own pocket.
All right,
Because I
fair.
did not have a budget to take people out to dinner.
I did not know that when you
So
bought
this-
the cookbooks.
This will
When I bought the
save me
cookbooks.
some tremendous money.
All right, perfect. Okay, so let's open up for questions. Do we have any? Oh, a picture. Oh, are you supposed to do this like an official? Should we shake hands? All right, thank you. That's enough of that. All right, thank you. All right, so for all of y'all on the web stream, do you have any questions? Because this is an interesting thing that you might not have heard about this before. I've been buried in it. The three of us have been buried in it. Do we have any questions online? And then I'm going to go to the room. And I already pre-staged some questions so that I won't look foolish. I didn't actually, so I hope one of you are going to ask a question. Kenny, I see you almost rose your hand. Sure.
The marketing piece is tremendous, being able to do that. Has there been an effort to change the conversation in town with citizens to get them to start talking about that? The reason I'm asking is I work with Cooperative Extension System. I worked in South Dakota for 7.5 years, and I'm from North Carolina, so I'm back in North Carolina working with Cooperative Extension. When in South Dakota, we developed a program called Marketing Hometown America, which didn't do what you're doing, the online marketing, that sort of thing, but we went into a community, got them in groups, had conversations about why would people want to move to this town. The coffee shop conversations are, town's going to pot, it's just going down, whatever. But when we made those efforts to change that conversations, people started having conversations of, oh, people would want to move here. It just changed the whole attitude of the town. So I don't know. I just, when I saw the marketing piece, I thought about that program in South Dakota.
Perfect. So I have one quick response from the perspective of our nonprofit is we were wanting to do an MVP. And so we had to do an MVP. So we tightened things. Our budget was extremely small, but Rob will have some insights on the kind of the community engagement aspect of things.
Yeah, so what we're calling Cheraw Connected, one of the beautiful parts of living in a small town is you kind of already know who your town champions are. And we actually solicited them directly to be part of that campaign in the event we get these people to move here and we really want to bring them into the community. We have that group of people ready to go and kind of keep them away from, unfortunately, there's always going to be cave people, right? Citizens against virtually everything. And so wherever possible, not that those people leave the house, but, you want to not let that be the image projected of your city. So we have this kind of group ready to go that does want to boost the town and see it be successful, and we'll talk up the town and the good things going on in the town. It would be interesting to take it a step further and go, okay, how can we expand this out to the broader community? But because this was such a pilot program, and not that Paul is not the consummate professional, but it a little by the seat of our pants in some ways, that'd be a good way to take it in the future.
Okay, we have another question over here.
So of course we're talking about stigma with remote workers because for some reason people think that's taking local jobs and taking away from things. So, But to your point, you have people you know in a small town like we all do, who is the people for it. What about people against it? What do you say to them? How do you talk to them? What did you have any experience with that? Did you go after people that you knew would be against it, or talk about it, maybe try and convert some people?
So we did talk about this, and I did have a couple of conversations because you do get people who are afraid of losing the traditional town feel that you have, or the established town feel. And one of the nice things about having that built-in group of champions, we have an online group not affiliated with the town that talks about the town, and unfortunately a lot of what they talk about is negative. But by having these built-in champions within the town, they were the ones actually going out and selling it and saying, look, this is a way. You talk about, we need this, we need this, we need this. That's only going to happen if you have people. And so they've been able to turn and maintain that conversation on our behalf, essentially, for saying, you know, this is a good thing, or the idea of it is good, that we're going to try to bring these people in. Another thing we have going for us is a lot of the town of Cheraw is already full of transplants. So we've benefited in that a lot of our champions, along with people who've been established, but are people who have found Cheraw accidentally, be it through our historic district or some other retirement method coming to town. We also do benefit from having a lot of international exposure because of our industries in town. People are fairly transient in those industries, so we're accustomed to new faces all the time. So fortunately, that has not been too much of a negative, and having those people, again, who will sell it for us on their own, who recognize the possible benefits, was also a tremendous asset.
Yeah, that came a lot from Aaron's feedback at the beginning from Tulsa Remote, because their community program was designed for when the transplants got there, the other transplants could connect with other transplants. His feedback was he thought that led to a lot of blowback. And that's why when we thought about Cheraw Connected, that idea that it had to be formal, that it had to be an actual thing, people actually had to meet to actually integrate them like into the community, would cut down at least a little bit on it.
Yeah, now I think another thing to add is, you know, you don't necessarily have to market as a remote worker thing. Like, it could be called Move to Hartsville, like a Move to Hartsville campaign, right? So the fact of the matter is you're going after that 1 in 3 people that now no longer physically need to stay where they're at because they are able to work remotely. So any other questions? Luke? Go.
So from a mayor perspective, how did you sell it to your city council and your mayor? And were they all on board? Were they split, mixed feelings on it? And how did that go?
So I'm very fortunate. I have a council that gets along very well. They all love each other, and they're all on the same page. And more importantly, they're willing to try stuff. And part of the reason for this having a low budget was because, well, yeah, why not try it and see what happens? We were also have a council member who is from Cheraw originally, but lived away for many years and now moved back in the pandemic. And she and her husband are both remote workers and have a big family. And so she was able to personally push for it. And then, of course, selling it as a economic development opportunity where you're diversifying the economy without actually having to do anything. It made it worth the shot, so to speak. Will we expand it and dump a lot of money into a campaign? That would be a separate conversation. But from a pilot standpoint, it was kind of like, yeah, let's try it. And we have a very progressive council who is willing to try things. And to quote my predecessor again, just throw 1,000 pieces of spaghetti at the wall and see which one sticks.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
I have,
Just say your name. and
I'm
what
sure.
you're up to.
Okay, Kim Bowman, and I have 2 questions. One, I know that the housing shortage is a huge challenge in a lot of small rural communities. So I don't know if that was a challenge for you. And my second question is, are you considering yet, or maybe you will down the road, to establish some type of a co-working facility?
So to answer the first question on the housing, we have houses on the market, or pretty consistently houses on the market, and ones that are good for growing families and certainly much more affordable than what you would find in the big city. In fact, going back to Daniel's question, one of the pushback pieces I did get was all these remote workers coming here, where are we going to put them all? And that question kind of amused me, because if we had that problem, then that would have been successful beyond my wildest imagination. You know, one or two new families coming into the community, our real estate market could handle that no issue. With the houses that do come on the market, what we see overwhelmingly in Cheraw is that they are bought by retirees or people moving in out of state. And so if you're focusing on remote workers, we're not really displacing anyone within the town already, so to speak. And what was the second question? Oh, a co-working space. That's something we've talked on and off a little bit. We don't feel like we're there at the moment, but if this turns into something, it certainly would be a conversation worth having. Because one of the things we've talked about before we got into the marketing aspect of this campaign was the importance of having, what do we call them, third spaces?
Yeah.
Yeah, third spaces where people can hang out and socialize. And we've had a tremendous growth in nightlife over the last few years, but we need other spaces as well. Not everybody is a bar patron. So, you know, we've talked about the necessity of having dog parks or just any kind of, or a co-working space or spaces where people can interact organically in a non-structured way that's just available. So, and that's something we would need to develop.
All right. Anything else from you, William?
No.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating. We had about 25 people online. I think that's tapered off, and I appreciate you all have stayed here in the room. Thank you for taking the time today. Please feel free to socialize a bit. Curtis, again, thank you for hosting us here at the Riparian, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening, and thank you very much.
This wraps up the second part of our two-part series on revitalizing rural communities through remote work. If you haven't already checked it out, please be sure to listen to episode 3, A New Era for Economic Development, the Impact of Remote Workers, where I explored how remote work is creating new opportunities for small towns to grow again. Together, these conversations highlight both the potential for rural communities and the strategies needed to make it happen. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time on Talking Rural.